Hello, one and all, and welcome to a new year of shenanigans. Nevertheless, by the time you're seeing this, this is either right before or right after New Year's Day, so I want to just say Happy New Year to everyone. And I thought it would be kind of like fun to have kind of like a summary blog of both kind of like my personal kind of like summary of the year, as well as just a summary of essentially MTG in general, and it's just a fun return to the top deck fought shenanigans, essentially. Nevertheless, let's just start off from personal, kind of like how this year been. Overall, the year's been fine. It had its ups, it had its downs. I'll be honest. Like at the end of the year, it kind of had a lot of its downs, but at the beginning of the year, it was actually really good. I was able to participate in a lot of charity events, a lot of fundraisers. So grateful I was able to participate in the Oathbreaker for charity event. A lot of participation and also being able to offer essentially a lot of giveaways to help people to essentially encourage charity within this community. It's still great to be able to do that, and it's great to see the charity of this community helping out people all around the lands of content creators, are also helping stuff like Trans Lifeline and a variety of charities at the fundraisers we did support, as well as the Extra Life one in the middle of the end of the year, essentially. That's been great. Also, actually, this is the first year I actually was able to get preview cards from Wizard of the Coast, which is really great. I'm still thankful for seeing Alan, I believe his proper name pronunciation. I apologize in advance. He was the influence manager at the time at WotC when I was getting the preview card, so I'm still very grateful he gave me that opportunity. I'm also grateful for the current kind of like part of the marketing department as well, like Jim, all the variety of people who work in marketing to essentially make it the advertising of this game really entertaining and just entertaining to see kind of like the little nits picks, kind of like essentially trying to decipher as well as just get entertained by what's coming up. Like I have to admit, like this is recently, but the fact that they did the whole Kamigawa teaser trailer thing, that was really well done. Like the fact that that teased the Planeswalker card within there, that's really cool. Also, the fact that they gave the story, which pretty much gave an introduction of the Planeswalker, as well as give us a little tidbit of the world design. That was also really cool. So, like, it'll be interesting to see the world design for this one. I'm a little bit cautious. I hope they represent the culture well, and I hope it doesn't provide any headaches. But I am really curious to see the design. And hey, Ninjutsu's coming back, so I'm not going to complain. Plus, also, like, the new forward basis for Kamigawa just looks. But that's a little sidetrack there. That's getting from the point. Other than that, a lot of cool preview cards I was able to preview. Like, for example, let me now go a little bit roll back here, essentially. Boop, boop. Like I said, this is going to be a little bit live bloggy. And no, Maskwood Nexus wasn't one that I essentially previewed. I was actually going to get to that one in a minute, but live, everybody. But like the first preview card I was able to review was stuff like Breakfast Night. Great card to start off with. I do love reanimated shells. And at the time, I was playing an EDH Awkward Knights deck, so this was like a perfect addition to the deck, so that was cool one to preview. There's also like the latest preview I did, which was the. Let's see, I think I can get this one. I always get the name a little bit wrong with this one because I always think it's one thing when it's the other. But Shambling Ghast, no, Shambling Ghast is the really good one drop from Crimson Vow. Let's see. The other card I was able to get the preview, which was awesome, was a really cool 2-drop Exploit Zombie. I know it. Mind Leech Goal. That's what it was. It was also great to be able to preview this card, especially participating with kind of like my local community who did a zombie parade and make like the preview video off that. That was really awesome to do. So it was very, very fun, kind of like to participate, kind of like in the preview seasons, as well as even the little dwarf equipment synergy card I was able to get. And started with my cooperation with Children of the Lawler, specifically with Crow to hire him for my editing stuff, which that was also another great beneficial this year. Like, I told him that he pretty much, the reason why the editing quality on this video is a little bit off is because I let him have a break on this one. But if Crow is watching this, I do want to say I do appreciate what you do. I know the year's been stressful for you, especially with all the commissions, as well as the holiday retail stuff and such. But I do appreciate what you do. I do appreciate you trying to put the little interesting new kind of like skits and gags and kind of like the cooperation we have with the Brewing Lab deck tech videos, as well as some of the top deck thoughts that we did have. That's awesome. I appreciate what you do. Keep going. And also even was able to sell a lot of cards as well as be able to get a lot of cool cardboard to a lot of people. Even though there was some delays, which that kind of gets to why this year was a little bit off. I feel like I need to explain. Like I constantly explain it on Twitter and such, but I do feel like it's better to have this like an official kind of like recording to explain kind of like what happened that caused the various delays, as well as just essentially a lot of problematic elements of this year for me. And that was mostly due to medical emergency issues with one of my close family members, essentially my grandpa. Grandpa had a lot of foot issues and such, and we didn't know until like later last month that he essentially was diagnosed with melanoma, or I believe I'm pronouncing that wrong. In other words, skin cancer. Which, being able to put it in perspective, I live with actually my family here, and we all the family essentially had grandpa here for the last essentially month and a half. Essentially, we even had like other segment earlier in the summer where we were taking care of him. So, nevertheless, it was very kind of like stressful and such. It did kind of like affected the content creation just a little bit. I was hoping to put more kind of like quality and such, but as well as the on time of deliveries, like other than that and a few postal glitches and such, it did cause a lot of delays while juggling both the family issues and such. Another one also did happen of a family issue, but that one's more private, so I'm not really going to talk about that. But nevertheless, it's safe to say cancer sucks. I do not like it. I do not like the going through it for one of my family members that I care for a lot. It freaking sucks. Like, I really don't know how to push it. Like, I'm not like going to do the dramatic, like cliche, like crying on stream or such, but safe to say that I already did a lot of crying going through this whole series of events and such, and I'm now a lot more empathetic, as well as sympathetic for people who have family members who go through this crap, essentially, for lack of a better word. So, yeah, that was not a fun element of the year. That was kind of the bleh of the year. But I guess on the other hand, what also was another bright moment of the year to not let this end on a downturn as a summary of my year and such. I did actually essentially was able to we finally one of my brothers actually was finally able to get their wedding done in Denver, and actually we had a whole kind of like day of actually going to Colorado, essentially celebrating the wedding and such, and just go through the whole reception and such. Of course, safe. We made sure we were like vaccinated, all that stuff, masks, etc., etc. Like we weren't being foolhardy about it. And for the most part, it was actually a pretty safe wedding. So it was nice to see them finally get together, and it was just a very cool event. Plus, it was just nice to actually wear a nice tux and such. So overall, for next year myself, what do I want to do to just kind of like better myself and such? Well, one that I've been trying to work on, even though I've been struggling a little bit here and there, is just health. Essentially, just being able to exercise a little bit more, probably eat a little bit better, since my dietary habits can range from being good some days and pretty bad some days. I'm not going to lie on that. But nevertheless, it's going to improve a little bit on that, and also just work out a little bit more. Hopefully, just try to get myself a little bit more healthier and such, as well as just essentially from the content creation space. I'm going to try to do a thing essentially where I'm going to have a little bit of a break hiatus after this patchwork video, as well as the quote unquote this video that you're watching now. But I should be back essentially on January the 12th, essentially. And the January 12th, what I'm going to do is that it's still going to be Arena Deck Tech Brewing videos. But the Catch 22 is essentially, we're going to change formats weekly and such. Like, the first time I come back, we're going to do an Alchemy Deck Tech. The following week, we're going to do Standard Deck Tech, and then a Historic Deck Tech. I thought it'd be kind of fun to cycle through the formats, test with more of the expanded card pool that I have on Arena and such, and just do some fun, janky brewing shenanigans and such. So that's going to be a goal for the next year. Have a weekly Deck Tech video where it's basically rotating the formats and trying some fun little synergies and such. So, with that, let's actually talk about how Magic did this year. Overall, it did pretty fine. Like, there was still, like, a few little hiccups here and there. Like, there is the fact that while Strixhaven had a lot of good ups, like the Mystical Archive and such, as well as its overall card design pool, there were some controversial lore elements. I did talk about it at the time, but you probably know about it, kind of like with the whole cliches that they use with the Killian story archetype that was very, very frustrating from a world design story aspect for a lot of people in the content creation community, as well as just people in general. Just it's never fun to see stereotypes when you see them and such. So oof on that. But besides that, overall, Kaldheim was a fun set. There was definitely some still kind of like silly cards that might feel a little bit busted. Like we all are already feeling the wrath of Auron's epiphany at return shenanigans due to Crimson Vow. But overall, I do love Kaldheim as a set. Like one of my favorite cards did come from that set, which finally we actually get to the one of my favorite cards, which a lot of really good cards came out this year, both in Commander as well as Standard. But if I had to go with kind of like my Jinky Brew card of the year, and it's probably going to go on my top 10 list that I'll be missing when it rotates and such. So, like, further down, it's Maskwood Nexus. I just really, really love this card. It's just a nice Jinky engine card. You can use it in a lot of Jinky brews and such. There's some decks that even go into, like, the 250 card brew style, where they just essentially do the World Tree, which was another great card that came from Kaldheim. And essentially just make sure that all their cards are in their deck are gods due to Maskwood Nexus, and then be able to tutor it out with the World Tree. Specifically just fun stuff. And there's even just a lot of cool cards. The flavor was good. The only thing that felt a little bit off with Kaldheim is you kind of wish this was a two-set in a sense, kind of like how we did with Crimson Vow and such. I mean, we already kind of like went through Innistrad, we already know the lore, but this new world design was really cool to see, and it would be kind of cool if they kind of were able to break it up in two sets and allow us to dig into the world a little bit more through its lore, world design, and maybe even some more expanded card design. Which they kind of did in a sense when we get to Alchemy to a bit, but we'll get to that one in a minute. Nevertheless, Kaldheim, pretty good. Strixhaven, really good. Also, essentially kind of like the Adventures in the Forgotten Realm set. I did actually like the set overall. It was definitely kind of like the power level of the core set, but you did see some very, very good cards in that set. Like, Loaf was a constantly a good card. Even one of the best commons that are currently in Standard came from that set, aka Deadly Dispute, which is now like a $3 to $4 common. Let that sink in for a minute. It was just a really good card. So there was a lot of flavor in there, and I did love how a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons community kind of like had fun just looking at the cards in the set and just essentially having their own, essentially 2 cents on how they interpreted the lore design, and just kind of like letting them have fun with Magic the Gathering through the D&D flavor. So it was really nice to see that. Then we actually get into Midnight Hunt. Midnight Hunt was fine-ish. It's just kind of like one of those scenes where it was one of those where it was a fine set, but it was not like amazing. Like, it was cool that we got a lot of cool themes from Midnight Hunt. Don't get me wrong. Like Angelo, aka the Jeskai guy, loved both Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow since it added a lot of gold cards to essentially their cube design. And overall, there was a lot of cool cards. Rain and 7, awesome card. Probably one of the better Commander cards that came out this year. There's even stuff like essentially the one I could think of is the Croaking Counterpart, which, as you could probably already know, I already made a few deck tech videos past the year with that card. Just fun to make frog clones and do like frog cloning shenanigans. And we even go to Crimson Vow with Grognot with more frog shenanigans and such. Like, both Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, it's kind of hard because both of them feel like they're kind of mid since they were so close together. But it was kind of fun how, even though I do think they kind of went a little too much into the Innistrad, just thinking that they had to go 2 sets with it, it is still kind of spread it thin a little bit. It was still kind of nice to see the card design. There was definitely a lot of good Jink Brew cards in that set, and there was even some good, very competitive cards such as like Galvanic Iteration, which extra turn players are a little bit happy that card exists. Let's put it like that. And also, actually, one thing before I forget, this whole year in general, the land cycle, with maybe the exception being Strixhaven, even though I think Strixhaven was pretty decent, the lands from this year were actually really good. Like how Kaldheim continued on the pathway cycle, which was great that we had a full set of pathways, as well as just essentially, even though Strixhaven lands are not the most popular of the bunch, it is still nifty to have in 2-color deck designs, especially if you're in those quote-unquote cult colors. And then even in Adventures in Forgotten Realm, the Manland cycle was just a legit great addition to help essentially a lot of kind of like mid-range to control, as well as sometimes in aggro decks like Din of the Bugbear, you constantly see in aggro decks, mostly because it's a very good aggressive Manland. So it's great to see that whole Manland cycle, so every color had a chance to do some Manland shenanigans. And it was also great to be able to, within like Crimson Vow, to get Field of Ruin as a tech card, which great to have that back in the meta again with all the man rans running about. Not gonna lie on there, but still, it was just really great to just essentially the land cycles have been really good, and then of course for Midnight Hut and Crimson Vow, it was just really nice to get the full. I call them chill lands. I know some people like to call them slow lands, though I never like to use slow as a terminology. It's mostly of a theme of being neurodivergent and such. It's a little weird. I don't like calling things slow because, negative connotations and whatnot. Still, nevertheless, really great year for kind of like Magic with card design in general. And then we have to talk about Arena, which, while the set designs have been really good, Arena has been. It's been kind of like one of those scenes where it's interesting as it has improved a lot. It's like one of those scenes where it's like it has 3 steps forward and 4 steps back kind of scenario. Where on one hand, where they do been trying to do a lot of new innovations to try to make the client a lot more varied and such, like being able to make historic brawl permanent format, great addition to Arena, and then even just being able to make some cool like events in general to help essentially get the new card styles from showcase art styles, some unique inventive formats and such. Really cool that they did that, and even it's nice to see them essentially experimenting with what was going to be alchemy with the essentially nerfed variation of card designs of very busted cards that got banned and such. However, with all this kind of like cool stuff, and as much as people give kind of like a bad rap about alchemy, I'm gonna be honest, I kind of like alchemy a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Alchemy is actually kind of a really fun format. Like, I do love seeing, for me, and many people, it's like, oh, that's because you played Hearthstone and you don't mind digital card game design, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I know that's a little bit of one that people will probably point to, but I do kind of love the seeing that WotC and just the Magic Gets design team essentially trying digital card designs. It allows them to kind of, for lack of a better word, be able to have more experimental designs on the digital client that was a little bit more troublesome to do in paper. Like, the one that I always like to point to is like from essentially, for example, the one that came from Eldraine, Outlaw Merriment, great card design, but still, it was really random. Like being able to have like a more or less like a six-sided die to make sure to determine whether it's 1, 2, or free. Make sure you have all those tokens and such. Like as much as I love playing this card, it was very cumbersome to play in paper. So if this was like a digital only card, perfectly fine. You could have the tokens, you could have the randomness determined by the client. If they essentially make it where more of their outlaw or merriment's methods of designs, which we have been seeing with the alchemy sets in general, kind of like stick to the digital client and then with the paper client have more of the fun, like still be fun and do some experiments with paper, don't get me wrong, don't like be too safe in the paper design, but at least have it where you have the paper design elements which make sense to do in paper, and then essentially ones that are more easier to do within the digital client because it would be more expand on design elements, let's just say. And you can definitely see that with the alchemy set, like they did with the draft mechanic and all that stuff. We even seen it with Historic Horizons, which yet again was another kind of like positive for me since I did love Modern Horizons 2 as a set in paper, and I kind of felt bad that I couldn't play it in Arena. Though Historic Horizons 2, the Jumpstart theme was actually a really nice theme, being able to have all those cards. However, we do have to get to the one con about Arena this year, and that is just. I hate to sound like a broken record because many content creators have already pointed this out, but I do have to talk about it. The economy for the arena is very bad. Like, it's not really good. Like, the fact that I was still reliant on opening packs to essentially get the wild cards we need to essentially be able to craft cards in sets. And the problem is we will also have expansion sets like Modern Horizons that's just more you get it through the jumpstart formula and such in general. That makes it where you have to still buy packs. I'm still surprised we don't have any method of either just wild card generation or buying wild cards and such. Like the factor that we don't even have like a desking system or such, it makes the just essentially jank brewing unless you spend a lot of cash on it very hard to do. And I feel like that's going to be a little bit more harmful in Arena in the long run, especially since they're now introducing all these cool new card formats. They're introducing alchemy. They're introducing the fact that we might have supplemental sets like the Jumpstart Historic Horizons and such. And it was cool to have all these like new additions to expand the client. But I do feel like you do need to have a refinement of the foundation, as we kind of seen with some of the accessibility of use of the client, as well as just its economy. I really, really wish that Arena can focus on that. Like refining their economy to make it where both the Arena client can be a lot more easier to essentially be able to jank brew with it for an expanded audience that might still have like a bit of a restricted budget. Like a lot of content creators have already offered their suggestions of how to fix it and such. And I just hope Arena does something because it is something that I've seen a lot of variety streamers that I care about kind of like moving away from essentially doing arena magic, mostly because of the factor that the economy, it's very hard to keep essentially grinding on arena, especially when you're not exactly rewarded if you go past a 15 win streak, which then means your only reward is ranking up, which then that means you have to make sure you build the most successful decks. Like it stagnates very easily. And I feel like alchemy is a great way to try to prevent that stagnation, or at least it's one of those where the best way I could put it, it's like it's solving a symptom, but it's not like solving kind of like the quote unquote main problem. Like it was solving the illness of the factor that metas can stagnate due to the information highway of current card game metas in general, like how a lot of people can share and like the best meta decks can be formed like that essentially in a few weeks and such. So having the ability to introduce new card pools and such within mid expansions is actually a really good idea to help prevent stagnation of the meta. I applaud them for that, but I do feel like they have kind of, due to the fact that we don't have the either refined or at least improved economy, as well as just some other nifty, what would be very nifty quality of life improvements, it makes the factor of being excited for these new kind of like sets or at least these new expansions into formats a little bit, dare we say, anticlimactic in the big scheme of things. Also, I think you've already been, Watsy, if you're listening to this, I know this has already been said to death to you, but yeah, the factor that the alchemy affected card designs that get nerfed affects historic. I understand why you did that because the fact that we do have essentially the modern horizons, which have the digital only cards, so you want to have historic be a digital only format. I get that, but I do think you do need to inevitably make, whether it's for Pioneer or whatever, make a essentially an eternal format that is paper, kind of like paper incentivized, let's just say, where maybe not any of the digital kind of like altered cards, so that people who want to like experience older essentially sets without going through the digital only as well as the nerfing of cards can at least have that experience. Like maybe have like a legacy format client of some sort, essentially. So that's something to at least consider. Nevertheless, though, I do want to still say that as much as there's a lot to say negative on Arena, I still feel like they did a lot of positive, as much as I give them crap about it. Because, like I said, they did really good, kind of like with Sam. What a start. Like, the cosmetics they've been doing were really good. There's even just some little methods where they improved a little bit, like such as the factor of the where to start. I love how they're now doing like free events and such, and the whole kind of like how they partnered up with stores and such, essentially to have the midweek events, and then you get a code from them. Granted, they now refined it a little bit, so you just get the free cosmetic item once you complete the event, which then not have the LGS participation, which I'm a little disappointed by, but I get it. But still, it's nice to have kind of like an incentive of midweek event where it kind of like changes the pace of the format, as well as get a little award with a cool cosmetic that you can essentially play with and such. So that's actually kind of nice to see that. I do also just like in general the factor that they did a lot of kind of like alternate kind of like arts essentially with the showcase. They were finding fun events to essentially get those showcase ones. That was cool too. And I even, like I said, I'm still a little optimistic on Alchemy, while I do think that if they want to have Alchemy last on the long run, it sounds like a broken record, but you do definitely need to fix your economy, so a lot of more people will be more welcoming of new format changes and such. to essentially then maybe have more fun with the format and be able to do some more janky brewing shenanigans. Nevertheless, I can't wait for the next year. I can't wait for the next unset. Unfinity is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see what that set provides. I'm also excited for Kamigawa. I'm really curious to see how they do their world design and card design in that one. I'm also very interested in kind of like the Brothers War shenanigans, so it's going to be very fun to see the card designs next year, and I hope I can make some janky brews to entertain y'all. Thanks for all who've been watching. I hope you all have a lovely year. And also, one more thanks. I want to thank everybody who has supported me and helped me out through kind of like this year. Like I said, there were some rough spots this year, but I had a lot of emotional as well as support from the community, and I am very appreciative of that. I even have some really good friends who helped be able to support and helped me throughout some of the more rough spots this year. And with that, I really do want to give the bottom of my thanks because that I'm very grateful for that. Nevertheless, it is now the end of the year, or at least very close to it. I hope you all have a lovely next year. I hope it's better. Let's hope it's better. And I hope everybody has some fun shenanigans. Nevertheless, like I said, on January 12th, we're going to start off with an alchemy brew, and we're going to brew around a very controversial card, let's just say. See you soon. Bada beep. Bada boop.